This is a Fatal 4 podcast.
Eyes forward and prepare to shuffle those feet from side to side. It's time for Squared Circle Strafe, the premier video game podcast of the Fatal 4 podcasting network. I am your host, Pro Wrestling Noah, aka Noah Stewart, and it's time to talk about video games. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for downloading, listening. Thank you so much. We're here to talk about video games. There was a lot of video games that happened this week, this past week, as it turns out. Yeah, there was a Kirby Air Riders Direct from Nintendo. Gamescom Opening Night Live happened. A whole week of Gamescom stuff happening. Been seeing some of the coverage of that from some different websites. And then I played some video games. So why don't we hop in to that? I liked talking about the video games I've been playing first last week. So why don't we just go ahead and do that again? Let's kick it off with talking about some of the time I spent playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. Finally, I moved to the new place, the new apartment, from old apartment to new apartment. And we are still waiting to get this couch in this apartment. We ordered a new couch. It's probably going to show up in probably another month or so. And I had the PlayStation sitting in the living room, and I would just like go in there and like sit on a camper chair every once in a while. I didn't love doing that. So I decided to bring the PlayStation into the office room and just kind of like daisy chain, like HDMI it into my computer monitor, and I've been playing that way, and that's been a lot more comfortable sitting in my office chair, so that's been nice. Kind of having a don't mention Paul Griffin on the Squared Circle Strafe podcast challenge impossible. Kind of having a Paul Griffin style moment where he just like puts off playing video games forever because he didn't have his gaming setup in his new place, and then he finally did, and now he's finally playing Assassin's Creed Shadows was the thing I think he spent the most time in recently. But yeah, so I got my PlayStation 5 set up. Finally played. Like the bummer about when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 remaster came out was that I had to go on a business trip like the same exact week it came out. So I was like, when am I going to actually be able to sit down and play this thing? And this week finally did. Turns out Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 is still really good. Those games still really good. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, one of the best games ever. Definitely one of the best Tony Hawk's. For me, it's definitely between Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and 3 are like best of the franchise. Tony Hawk Underground is probably close up there, which I really hope that they end up doing Tony Hawk Underground remaster at some point. And if not, like, because they've been bundling them in twos. I don't necessarily know if I want Tony Hawk Underground 2 as much. Like, I would much prefer having maybe Tony Hawk's Underground and then American Wasteland in the same package. Because the thing about Underground 2 is that it's very much it's a Tony Hawk game, but it's also kind of a Jackass game, and it's just got a lot of, like, I don't know if that humor plays as much these days. Even at the time, like, I played it when it was new, and I found the humor to just be, like, really not my thing. So, I don't know. Hey, I'll mention another Fatal 4 host on here, Cody Carlson. I'm sure he would love to have a American Wasteland remaster available to him on his PlayStation 5. But yeah, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4, excellent, excellent video games. I put a ton of time into the previous remasters that they did for 1 and 2. That was during the pandemic is when that one came out. So I had a lot of time to just like play it over and over and over again, which I kind of have the same issue that I had with that remaster with this one. And it's that once you finish all the challenges for like each of the games, you're kind of done with it. Like there's not a ton else I mean, like they have the level creator in here and stuff. You can do online multiplayer, but as far as like, single player playing Tony Hawk games, once you finish all the challenges in a level, then that's just like you've done it. And it doesn't like I really wish that you could reset the challenges per skater so that you could, like finish the game with each character, because like there's not really a reason to change skaters in the roster, especially because when you pick up the skill points in each level and then you attribute those skill points, when you select a new character, you can just like reallocate the points back into the new character. And so like it's not like there's really not any differences between the characters besides like look and aesthetic. Like, oh, I want to be Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles this time, or I want to be the Doomslayer, because those guys are in the game, as well as Bam Margera, which is nice that they're. I know there was a lot of like, oh, is he going to be in the game or not? And then they finally got him in there. It's nice. You can unlock him with Tony Hawk bucks. But yeah, great games still. That there was also a lot of like kind of hubbub about 4 being in this game, because originally the original release on PlayStation 2 for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, they kind of started the migration to the kind of open world like style of Tony Hawk game, because like up to 3 you had the 2-minute jam sessions and like trying to complete as many challenges as you can within those 2-minute jam sessions. And 4 was the first time that they like had a like decently sized level, and you had to go up to people in the level to start challenges. And in the remaster, they just made it 2-minute jam sessions, which actually I don't, it doesn't feel like they shrunk the levels down at all. It still feels like it's the same, like volume of space in those levels. And honestly, the 2-minute jam sessions doesn't feel like that crazy. But I can only imagine when and if they do a underground remaster, that you have to adhere to the open world structure of those games. I think maybe with this game it was just easier on development to make them both 2-minute jam sessions, just like for the overall structure of the game. But since moving forward, we would be in the open world Tony Hawk games, I can only assume that. But then that also begs the question, do you just do one? Like, instead of doing collections of 2 Tony Hawk games, do you just put out Tony Hawk's Underground remastered as its own game, and then, American Wasteland as its own game? I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think so. Previously, Vicarious Visions did Tony Hawk 1 and 2. And then that developer got swallowed up into the Activision Blizzard machine to help develop, I don't know, I think it was like Diablo 2 Remaster or something like that, which was a shame. I was especially heartbroken because I just wanted more Tony Hawk remasters. But so Iron Galaxy took over for the 3 and 4 remaster, and they did a great job. It feels pretty much exactly the way the 1 and 2 felt. Just the way that you want a Tony Hawk Pro Skater game to feel. And they hit it out of the park. So hopefully Iron Galaxy is able to, continue forward. Hopefully sales did well for this game, and Activision wants to keep, putting money into making more of these, because I will buy them every time. I will be there every single time. I bought the deluxe version of this game, not only because I wanted the Doomslayer, but because I just wanted, the full release version of the game. So yeah, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4. Love it. I'll probably, a game I will continue to play. It's just a great game to put on with a podcast and just, do combos to my heart's delight. The other game that I ended up spending a decent amount of time with this week is the Rogue Prince of Persia, which was actually came out in early access last year. But this past week finally went 1.0. It is from the developers that made Dead Cells, and it feels a lot like that. What's funny is that this game, I think it came out at the same time that The Lost Crown did, the other Prince of Persia game that Ubisoft put out. I think it came out like maybe a month after Lost Crown did. And both are very good feeling games to play, like the running around with the respective princes of Persia are both very good. The control in this game does feel a lot like Dead Cells. You see a lot of the Dead Cells DNA in Rogue Prince of Persia, like with them both being side-scrolling roguelike games. Roguelite. How actually it's a roguelite, people like to split hairs about the roguelike and roguelite. But yeah, game feels real good to run around in. At first, I thought the overall structure of the game was also pretty similar to Dead Cells. Having like these levels that you go through, taking out a bunch of enemies. You have, a bunch of different weapons you can choose from, and secondary weapons, and that you can kind of pick up throughout the levels as you unlock more options for weapons that you can get in runs, as you're wont to do in a roguelite. And then at the end of each level, you kind of have a decision of going like up or down with like where you want to go, like with the levels, like kind of like what zone you want to go to next. And the thing I liked about I think I like about this game that kind of differentiates itself from Dead Cells, because in Dead Cells, the different like choosing which levels you kind of went to, I think just you had like there were like reasons to go to those levels, to maybe they had like some different weapons you can get, but it was mostly like, oh, like which one of these do I feel like I am better prepared to take on, like with the different enemies or kind of different level designs that they had in them. But in this game, you actually like end up talking to a lot of people, and they give you objectives that you then have to go to these other like specific levels to go and complete those objectives. And that I think is interesting, because it that also kind of feels very like post Hades in a way. So it kind of feels like a nice mixture of Dead Cells and Hades in that regard, where you have like a lot of characters you're talking to, and like building relationships with those people, and getting missions from those people to go do in all these different levels. And yeah, and it looks really good. I think the animation looks really great in Rogue Prince of Persia. Again, this is a game that I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time playing. I mean, obviously, it's a roguelite, so I will naturally just kind of like boot it up, do a run or two, and maybe put down for a little bit. But yeah, Rogue Prince of Persia, I would recommend. Now that the full release is out, I think it's like $30 on Steam, and it's on PlayStation Plus, so definitely worth trying out there. I think you have to opt into like the extra plan, but also this week, Sword of the Sea came out, I think, on PlayStation Plus. I haven't played that yet. I wanted to get around to it. I just barely didn't have enough time, but I do want to try and put some time into that pretty soon. Hopefully I'll be able to talk about it on next week's episode. But yeah, those are the games I've been playing. Why don't we take a quick break here? And we've got a lot of news and showcase to cover. So when we come back, we'll go over some showcases. And we're back, folks, and let's talk about some of these, video game directs, showcases, what have you, that happened this past week. Specifically on, I think it was on Tuesday. It was a very busy time to watch streams about video games. Early in the day, Nintendo had their own Kirby Air Riders specific direct that they put out, hosted by Sakurai, which was fun because it's always fun. It's always fun listening to him. He's such an interesting developer. I really do need to spend more time watching his YouTube channel. He has some like really insightful videos about game development on his YouTube channel. And this kind of felt like that, in that even the direct starts and he just like lets out a big sigh and is like, man, making video games is hard. Which I think really provides a window into Sakurai's soul as a maker of video games. But this whole stream about Kirby Air Riders, he went into such specific detail about it. Was like 40 minutes long, and he talked so long about this game. But one of the interesting things that he kind of said about it was that, so Kirby Air Ride for the GameCube, the original Kirby Air Ride, racing game, that game I think was like kind of rushed out of development in time for the release of the GameCube. So they didn't get to, it didn't get polished as much as I think he would have liked the first time around. So apparently Kirby Air Riders is kind of the game that he wanted to make the first time, like in the first place. And apparently, like, Nintendo actually came to him and pitched, hey, would you like to do a follow-up to Kirby Air Ride? And Sakurai was like, isn't that like maybe a little too close to Mario Kart, because it's like kind of just Mario Kart? And Nintendo was like, oh, yeah, but do you want to do it? And Sakurai was like, I guess. So ended up making the game. But apparently this time the city trial mode is the main star of the game, because it has the racing thing where you it's like a kart racer kind of thing where you're on a racing track and you're trying to get first. But then the original game had this too, the city trial mode, which I think if you talk to most anyone who was a big fan of the original release of Kirby Air Ride will tell you that city trial is like the mode that people played for that game to get like the maximum enjoyment out of it. If you ask my wife, that's definitely the thing that she'll tell you. So it was excellent news to her that Sakurai says that is like the main attraction of this version of Kirby Air Ride. So yeah, there's so much that I could go into, but I will just leave it to the man himself. If you want to go look up that Kirby Air Riders Direct and get all that information, that is available on Nintendo's YouTube page. But the big main event that happened that later that day, this past week, was Gamescom Opening Night Live 2025, brought to you by the one and only Jeff Keighley, putting on this is kind of the Summer Game Fest kicks off the summer of video game announcements, and Gamescom is kind of like the capper to the summer. And we, this is kind of the mid-gap stopping point before we get more of this at the Game Awards. Kind of like the three big major shows of the Keighley-verse of announcing video games. And this show was, gonna be honest, kind of bad. There wasn't really a ton of stuff that was either new or like super exciting. But they did the one of the things I do like is that Kyle Bossman, one of my favorite video game YouTube people, did the pre-show for this, and he's been doing the pre-show for some of Keeley's other video game shows. And the pre-show was he's very funny. It was a very good pre-show, and well, like funny enough, the pre-shows tend to have like some of the games that I'm most excited for a lot of the times with these Keeley shows. And it kicked off in that pre-show with an announcement of Bubsy 4D. That's right, folks. There's going to be a new Bubsy game, which I believe they are already doing a remaster of Bubsy 3D for some reason. And they are making a whole new 3D Bubsy platformer. Sure. Hopefully it's better than Bubsy 3D. That's not a high bar to clear. They are also, kind of poking fun. They're in on the joke that Bubsy 3D is one of the worst 3D platformers of all time. And they, like, in the trailer, they even kind of play around with that. Like, they like showed some footage of Bubsy 3D, and they have like, the new Bubsy like screaming anytime he sees footage of the old Bubsy. So that's fun. One of the most exciting games I saw during this whole show was for a game called Densha Attack, which appears to be a game where you control a train, but you're having the train like do flips and grinding and like a train equivalent of a kick flip. It looks like a skating, like Tony Hawk style skating game, but you're a train, and it's like all like kind of cell shaded, very stylish kind of anime style. That game looks sick as hell. I like could not put it on my wish list fast enough. So excited for Densha Attack. Then they showed a game called Long Gone, which looked like a kind of 3D, 2D, pixelated zombie survival game, but like also kind of like a point and click adventure game kind of thing. It looks like it all mostly took place in the same house. You're trying to keep zombies from entering the house while also, scavenging supplies and trying to like, keep up your defenses. It looks interesting. It also looks like it has like a, good sense of humor to it. So that's one to keep an eye on. Then they showed Valor Mortis, which, as the Steam page says, is a first-person action Souls-like from the creators of Ghost Runner, which I really like the Ghost Runner games. Rise from death as a former soldier of Napoleon's army, wield supernatural powers, battle horrifying monsters, and unravel a conspiracy that threatens all of humanity. Game looks real goopy, like a lot of like guys splitting open and guts and like a lot of stringy, goopy stuff going on. It looks neat. And this developer already proved that they, have a good grasp on like first person fast paced melee action. So definitely looking forward to Valor Mortis. They showed a trailer for Routine yet again. This game, it's a like horror game where you're running away from robots. And I think the first time they showed this game was like 2012 or something. And they keep showing trailers for like it's coming soon. Like every couple years they show a new trailer for it. And it's like, is this game actually coming out? I don't know. I think they may have said that they now have a release window for next year, which, we'll see. But from what I understand, it actually had like kind of like a procedurally generated kind of like roguelike loop when it was first announced. And I don't think that's part of the game anymore. I think it's more of a kind of straightforward narrative horror game now. It's got a good look, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. This game has spent like over a decade in development hell. So we'll see what it actually, I'll be curious to see what it looks like when it actually comes out. Then one of the last things we got for that pre-show was a game called Road Kings from Saber Interactive, the people that bring you, what is it, Mud Runners, a lot of like kind of simulation trucking games. And what this looks like is American Truck Simulator, but like with a narrative. Like it has a named main character, I think named Deacon, and it looks like the big hook is that there will be a lot of different weather that you'll have to drive through. It has like kind of a dynamic weather system that you'll have to contend with as you are trying to make these 18-wheeler deliveries. So that sounds neat. I like American Truck Simulator. So having kind of more, like both mechanical and narrative hooks attached to that will probably be really cool. And then to finish off the pre-show, they showed a trailer for a Pac-Man and Sonic the Hedgehog crossover that they're doing, where they're adding Pac-Man to Sonic Crossworlds, the new kart racer for Sonic the Hedgehog. Pac-Man will be a playable character in that. And then they are adding like 3D Sonic levels to Pac-Man World 2, the like Pac-Man remaster they're doing of Pac-Man World 2, which is bizarre but kind of neat. Then the show proper kicked off with another look at Black Ops 7, which looks they're kind of going back to the kind of Black Ops 3 style of like kind of trippy, like jacking into people's minds and like having like really weird kind of like Inception style level design and stuff. But it's interesting that they're doing a Modern Warfare 2 to 3, where last year's game was Black Ops 6, and we're just going back to the Black Ops well for Black Ops 7 this year, which I believe this comes out in October, so this will be hitting soon. We got to look at Lords of the Fallen 2, which is interesting because technically, so Lords of the Fallen came out in like 2013 on like PS4, and I think it was originally a PS3 game maybe, or maybe it was like a early PS4 game. And then the follow-up to that game, it was called The Lords of the Fallen, so it's kind of like a reboot for the franchise. And then this is Lords of the Fallen 2, which is technically the third game in the franchise, so it's all fucked up. It looks like a Souls-like, whatever. I've never really been that crazy into Lords of the Fallen. I just thought that it technically being the third game in the franchise was weird and worth pointing out how weird that is. They showed a trailer for a anime based on Sekiro, which when I was watching the trailer for it, and it felt like something was off. It felt like kind of weird, just like the visuals of it were kind of like a little weird looking. And then it turns out that if you do a little digging, look up the anime studio that is doing it. They use a lot of AI in their process, and I went, that's why it looks a little fucked up. So probably not going to be watching that. But something that did look cool that they showed next in the show was a trailer for Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, which so the Lego games I feel like have like followed a pretty similar formula as far as their gameplay. Like most Lego games play the same from game to game. Like, from different franchises, they tend to just play like Lego games. But it looks like with this one, they are actually doing like Arkham style combat. Like the kind of, like attack, counterattack, kind of zoop around the field and attack like, big groups of enemies style of Arkham combat. And then the moments from Batman that they're pulling from is like from a whole pool of Batman media. Looks like there's a lot of references to the Nolan trilogy, and like, complete with, Tom Hardy, Bane with the Tom Hardy voice. But then there was also like some moments that looked like the Matt Reeves, the Batman movie. So they're pulling from a lot of stuff here. And this is probably the most excited I've been for a Lego game in a long time. And especially because ever since Superman came out, I've been hyper fixating on DC Comics. So this comes at a good time for me to be like really excited about DC stuff. So Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. Count me excited. The next thing they showed in the show was like kind of dumb. There's a decent amount of stuff that frustrated me about this whole showcase. And one of the things was they started showing what looked like a trailer, and the visuals of it, I was like, is this Control 2? Like there's a lot of like floating shapes and red lights and kind of brutalist architecture. And then it turns out that it was just a trailer for it was a promo video for Gamescom, like, hey, come to Gamescom, which I was like, well, that was rude. I was excited for Control 2. But after that, they showed, we got another look at Onimusha Way of the Sword. We kind of got a look at the creepy villain lady of I'm sure there will be like, many like kind of villain characters, but it's nice to see like one of the most fun things about Onimusha is when they have their kind of Power Rangers style, like type of villains. And this very much seemed to be in that lane of characters. So I'm excited for that Onimusha game, especially because, they've said that it's kind of a, Souls-esque, character action game, but they like straight up said, hey, if you're ever worried about the level of challenge that those games usually have, don't be that worried about this game. So it'll be nice to kind of have like a more breezy version of that kind of game. God, throughout this whole show, there was like a lot of like trailers for anime gotcha games that I didn't really care about. And like, I think there were 2 separate World of Tanks trailers that showed up at separate times during the show. That wasn't fun. They had this whole section of the show dedicated to the Fallout TV show because the second season of that's coming out, and they had like people from the show get up on stage and talk about that for a long time. And I really tuned out for a lot of that. No shade to people who enjoy the Fallout TV show, but I was just not. I was here for video games, not TV. And that was like kind of also a kind of frustrating thing about the show at large, is that after some of the trailers, Keeley would bring up developers to talk about the games, which like that, the sentiment is nice, but a lot of what all of those developers had to say was just kind of like fluffy marketing stuff. So I ended up just like tuning out a lot of what was said during those portions, and it really like kind of dragged down the momentum of the show. But they did show they kept hyping this up throughout the whole show. A look at a new game by Ron Gilbert, the developer and designer behind the Monkey Island games back in the day. And he has a new game called Death by Scrolling, which is a like pixelated, like it kind of looks like a like Vampire Survivors like game where the level is constantly scrolling vertically up, and you're like attacking all these enemies, and there's I think like death, like the Grim Reaper is like chasing you at certain points in the game. Just looks like a pretty standard roguelite kind of game. I did not think the music in that trailer was very good, but it's Ron Gilbert, so at least give it a try because the name is so legendary. Got a trailer for the new game from one of the former Disco Elysium dev teams, Zero Parades, which is a fun name for a game. Looks very similar to Disco Elysium. They kind of like showed glimpses of gameplay that showed kind of like an isometric style that looked very similar to Disco Elysium. Had some flashes of concept art, so not a lot of details on that game besides aesthetics so far. We got a trailer for Unbeatable, which is a very flashy kind of anime style rhythm game that I'm very excited for. There's a demo for it out of now, a very meaty, big demo that you can play. And they finally, with this trailer, they finally put out a release date for that game, which is November 6th, which I'm very looking forward to. Got another look at, like some other games like Ninja Gaiden 4 got a trailer, Silent Hill F, which we kind of finally got a look at the Japanese setting for that game. That looks nice and spooky. A game called La Divina Commedia, which appears to be a game based on the Divine Comedy, which, we also have Dante's Inferno back in the day on PlayStation 3. It's kind of funny that we now have two games based on the Divine Comedy. Video games, everybody. But this one looks like, whereas Dante's Inferno was very much a God of War style action game, this one looks a little closer to a Souls-like, because every character action game that comes out these days is kind of a Souls-like situation. We got a trailer for a new Cult of the Lamb DLC, Woolhaven. Kind of looks like it takes the game into a winter setting. I love the original release of Cult of the Lamb. I don't think I've really played it since it's come out. I know they've put out like maybe 2 or 3 other DLC packs, like updates since then. And this one kind of has me convinced that like maybe I should boot up Cult of the Lamb again. That's a really fun game. They showed a trailer for a game called Project Spectrum, which when they first showed it, I definitely thought it was Resident Evil 9 for a second, just from the way it looked. It's kind of a first-person horror game, first-person shooter that looked like it had like some neat powers, like phase shifting, and there are a bunch of like goopy guys running around. So that looks neat. Don't really know a ton about it besides that, but looking forward to getting some more details down the line. They showed another trailer for Ghost of Yotei, which is interesting because Sony already did a state of play that was like dedicated to Ghost of Yotei recently. So like not a ton to glean from that trailer, but they did announce that they are doing a multiplayer mode that is basically like the thing that they did for Tsushima, that I know a lot of people really, really liked that multiplayer mode. So that's exciting. But then we did get an actual trailer for Resident Evil Requiem, Resident Evil 9. But it was just a story trailer. I was really hoping that we'd get like some gameplay or something, but not the case. Also the story trailer, I feel like didn't really reveal a ton. It was just like a mom and a daughter that, get attacked by home invasion, and the trailer ends with like mom getting stabbed in the back. So not really a ton to glean from that, but hey, it's Resident Evil. I will be there regardless. And then the one last thing they showed to kick off this whole showcase was an announcement for the follow-up to Black Myth Wukong, Black Myth Zhongqi, which is, whereas Wukong was based on, the Journey to the West mythos with the Monkey King. This one is based on a ghost-catching god, which I guess is Zhongqi. I don't know, but I didn't really play Black Myth Wukong. I know it's got, it's got its fans, so I'm sure people who are excited for that are excited for Zhongqi. But yeah, that was the showcase. Not a ton to get super excited about, and like the show was like 2.5 hours long, and a lot of it dragged with all of the like gacha game trailers and games of service trailers, and like bringing people up to the stage to just talk for a long time. So I don't know, I feel like this was easily the worst show of the year that they've had, that Jeff Keighley has put on. And it kind of makes me worried for that, like, all of these shows are just going to be like this. And also, like, I think I talked about this during Summer Games Fest, is that, like, because the E3 season of game announcements has kind of been spread out between Summer Games Fest, this show, and the Game Awards. It kind of feels like each one of the showcases kind of has like less and less to show because it's so spread out. So the shows are kind of less exciting than like when E3 was the big thing. So I don't know. Also, video game, like, the business is just in a really weird place right now. With all, like, there being constant layoffs and stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the future of video games has to hold. But why don't we talk about some of that future in some news stories after we take a quick break. All right, folks, let's finish up this show here with some of the news that happened last week. One of the biggest news stories actually was talked about during Gamescom Opening Night Live and was announced by the developer themselves that Hollow Knight Silksong has a release date, and it's very soon. It is coming out on September 4th. Team Cherry put out a announcement with Jason Schreier, who actually had a little like interview that he did with them, which was really fun. Basically saying that the reason why Silksong has taken so long to develop is because they were just making the game. It turns out there isn't like really any controversy. They just like were having a good time making the game, and they wanted to make it as best as possible, so they kept making it. And also, like, Hollow Knight has continued to just like sell very well since it's come out. Basically, I think it's up to like 12 million sales, which is crazy. So they've just been like getting revenue from Hollow Knight, and just it allowed them to keep making Silksong, which is funny because Silksong, I believe, was originally supposed to be a Kickstarter goal for like a DLC, basically. And then they ended up making so much of it that it just became its own standalone game, which, became a meme of sorts of, like, the game was announced and then just like went silent for a long time. And in almost any kind of like game direct or showcase, the joke is always like in the chat, everyone's like, Silksong? Is Silksong here? Where's Silksong? And it's finally coming out September 4th. Again, we will see. I think for a lot of people, they won't believe it until it's actually in their hands. But less than 2 weeks from now, you will be able to download and play Silksong. And also, what's funny, there's an article put out by Aftermath.site where they interviewed a bunch of indie devs who actually are ending up moving their releases for their games that were supposed to come out around the same time that Silksong is now releasing. The developer for the game Clover Pit is moving their release date, saying that like they think that people will love playing both of the games, but they don't want to be overshadowed by like the huge monolith that is Silksong. So I think they're pushing theirs back to, this says September 26th is when they're moving their game. Also, what's funny though is that Demon School, which is a indie RPG that I'm very excited for, are actually keeping their release date of September 3rd, which is the day before Silksong comes out, because and they're saying that they feel like the games are kind of different enough so that like the audiences maybe don't overlap as much, which is some nice confidence. The Bennett Foddy, famous developer behind Getting Over It and the upcoming Baby Steps, are saying that they're considering moving dates, just because they haven't fully decided yet. I think they were originally supposed to come out on September 5th, which is the day after Silksong comes out. So we'll see there. But yeah, interesting times for indie development, but with a legendary, game that's been in development for so long, and it's finally coming out. And now can't make Silksong jokes anymore. We'll have to find a new game to say, hey, when's this coming out? So that's funny. So yeah, Silksong. You'll be able to play it soon. I am definitely, I think I said it on this podcast when I played it earlier this year, when I finally got around to finishing Hollow Knight, that I am not like the hugest fan of Hollow Knight. I honestly think it's like a little overrated, which, could be blasphemous to some people. But I think I've played Metroidvanias that I've enjoyed more than Hollow Knight. So I don't know if I personally am super excited to play Silksong, but I am going to play it just because it has become this like thing in the culture that is like so big and feels so important that I just kind of have to know. So hopefully I'll be, talking to you about Silksong in a couple weeks here, about some time having played it. Moving on to some other like weird or interesting news, being that Bungie CEO Pete Parsons is leaving Bungie after nearly a decade. Which, is concerning given that, all the trouble that they've had with Marathon recently, that game getting pushed back, especially recently due to some plagiarism issues with the art style and the graphic design, I should say. And man, Bungie they've put out some amazing games, but they have kind of historically always been a troubled studio as far as like team morale and like pressure on development teams and stuff. So, we'll see what the future holds for Bungie. Speaking of higher ups in companies, instead of leaving the team, we have someone entering, that being Rod Ferguson, dubbed the Closer, who helped finish BioShock Infinite back in the day, has now joined the development team that is working on BioShock 4, to basically do the same thing. Basically, like, come in, like, from what I understand, the way from the way that he helped with BioShock Infinite was that they spent so much time making that game. And when he got there was basically like 3 or 4 different versions that game could have been. And then they put Ferguson in there just to be like, okay, you have to make something. You have to put something out. We are taking basically all of these concepts and just put them into one thing, get this game out the door. Which, I wonder if that is similarly the case here with BioShock 4. But given his previous track record, he'll get it done. So maybe sometime in the next year or two, we'll have a new BioShock, which will be interesting. Speaking of games coming out, one that's coming out soon is the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. And they are adding 2 more games to what has been announced for that collection. Interestingly, being some of the more panned games in that franchise's history, those being Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero and Mortal Kombat Special Forces, both being PlayStation 1 games. Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Sub-Zero being a like side-scrolling action platformer that used the fighting game engine kind of it to its, not playing very well because you're using fighting game controls in a action side scroller. There's and also Mortal Kombat Special Forces being a kind of isometric action game where you play as Jax with his big steel arms and shooting guns and stuff. Both of those games have very good on a Giant Bomb, their Blight Club series where they play bad video games. They've played both of these games and those videos are very fun. So if you're at all interested to see what those games look like, go and check out Blight Club on Giant Bomb. Good old Mike Minotti making his way through those games. And speaking of some announcements, we also got the Pokemon Company put out a kind of horror themed trailer announcing the mega evolution of Victory Bell, which looks really weird. Victory Bell already is kind of a, memed upon, like kind of like silly character to look at and talk about. But this version of Victory Bell, like, it's the Victory Bell, but it has been like kind of inflated, and then it has like vines wrapped around its neck, and its mouth head looks kind of small, but apparently like in the trailer, it's like two people walking through a like urban haunted house, and they happen upon a bunch of like poison purple goop everywhere, and what's making the poison goop is this mega Victory Bell. The trailer was really fun. The new design has some critics online. There's people that love it, people that hate it. Watch the fun trailer to see where you land on it. But the trailer was very well done, and the mega evolution is coming to the soon to be released Pokemon Legends ZA, coming to Switch 2 October 16th. And then last bit of news here, Illphonics, the people that made the now defunct Friday the 13th game, are making a game based on the Halloween franchise, which I think will be similar to the Friday the 13th game, that kind of like Dead by Daylight, what do you call it? Asymmetrical multiplayer kind of experience. But they're also putting in a single player component to the game, which kind of has me interested because I have never really played any of those asymmetrical multiplayer games. They haven't really interested me very much. But if there's a single player Halloween game in kind of a, AAA budget kind of thing, like I kind of have to know what that looks like. I'm a big horror fan. I love the Halloween franchise. I know I don't sound that excited about it because I don't know, just this developer's previous games haven't really excited me too much, but I will be interested to see what this ends up turning out to be. But yeah, that is all the news that happened this week. That's video games, folks. They're happening, and boy, are they happening. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't looked up the release schedule for October, it is large. The video games, there's a lot of them in October, so got about a month to wrap up whatever games you're playing now and get ready for a bunch of stuff coming soon. But that'll do it for this episode of Square Circle Strafe. Thank you so much for listening. Leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts if you like the show. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Oozing Neon. If you want to catch more of me talking about some real nerdy stuff, you can follow the Didn't Get All of It podcast to hear me and the rest of the Fatal 4 hosts talk about the latest and greatest in professional wrestling. You can also sign up for our Patreon to get exclusive access to our Discord, as well as bonus content and the satisfaction of supporting independent podcasting media. Head to patreon.com/fatal4pod. That's fatal, F-O-U-R pod. Thank you again for listening, and as always, enjoy your gaming.
You've been listening to a Fatal 4 podcast. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts and visit fatal4pod.com for more episodes, merchandise, and info on the Patreon.